Hey folks, Robert O'Brien from O'Brien Guitars here. How you doing today? And thanks for tuning in to this latest edition of Shop Talk with O'Brien Guitars. Looks like everybody's starting to tune in here. We already got several people online here. I'm monitoring here off camera. Looks like we've got somebody all the way from Pakistan. Man, that's just amazing what we're able to do with technology these days. So thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And we're firing on all cylinders here today. Got all the cameras up and running here throughout the shop. Let me just give you an example. Here's camera number 1. And if I walk over here to camera number 1, hey folks, how you doing? And if I hit camera 2, and let's see, we got to get camera 2 up and running. There we go. And camera 2 is coming online now. Thanks, Thiago. Here's camera 2. And you can see my bench here. I've got several things here that I've been working on this week. Here's a beautiful requinto that came in. This is a builder that passed away here recently, and his family brought me several instruments to work on, and this is one of them. It didn't have a finish on it, and so I'm putting a finish slowly on this instrument. And here I've got a box of materials from LMI that tomorrow's student will be showing up, and we'll be making a guitar this week. How are we doing with audio? Audio is okay?
Yeah, your connection is kind of bad for this. You keep like rubbing on it and it clicks.
Is it clicking because we're maxing out maybe? All right, back to camera 4 here. And you get me again. Isn't that cool? Got cameras all over the shop here so you can dial in and see what I'm doing. And I'm going to try and monitor the chat as we go here. Today's topic is fretting tools. And you don't want to miss out. There's going to be a special offer during the live chat here. One of the tools that I use here for fretting is made by LMI, and it's going to be we're going to be offering a discount, 15% today. But you have to use the promo code, and I'm going to give that out a little bit later here in the stream when I show you the tool that I use. So let me just acknowledge everybody here. We got somebody all the way from Pakistan, and excited from the chat, Kauai, using an African ebony fretboard. It was a challenge to cut the frets. Oh, I can imagine, yeah. Peter, how you doing? Glad you can make it. Let's see. Kevin O'Brien. Hey, Kevin, how's it going? And we got, let's see, who's in Ireland? Kevin, are you in Ireland? Let's see, I would say good afternoon, but that depends on where you are. Hello, everyone. This is Rollo. Rollo's down there in Texas. Rollo's a very interesting guy. He one time told me, he lives in Victoria, Texas. He told me one time that he had lived so far south that when Brazil scores a goal, he can hear them cheering. So that's pretty far south there in Texas. Joy's Guitars, hi everyone, hope you're all well. Adriana O'Brien, wow, that's my wife. She's tuning in. Man, that's an honor. Have your own wife tune into this thing. That's pretty cool. San Diego, we got Richard tuning in there. Havana, Florida, Alan, stream's good. Jim, greetings. Petaluma, California, Wisconsin. Boy, everybody's well represented. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Today's topic, like I said, is going to be fretting tools. I've been wanting to get to this topic for the last couple of streams, but there's been so many great questions come in here that I haven't really gotten to it. So today's the day. Oh, wow, look at that. There's Miss Brazil here. Are you off camera? I don't think she even got in on camera, but she just brought me a nice cup of Brazilian coffee. Thank you. I certainly appreciate that. That's Miss Brazil. You want to step on camera here real quick? Sure. This is Miss Brazil here, also known as the girl from Ipanema, and she she brought me some great coffee. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, dear. Always helps these streams go a little bit better. Oh, we also have the Duke cam set up there. There's Duke, the shop dog, laying down on his bed, so he may have a question or two here for us today. There's my son keeping him company there on the bed. You want to keep the Duke cam on there for a while, Thiago?
Sure.
All right.
I have to go to work soon, though.
All right. Well, let's get started talking about fretting tools. And the reason why I've been wanting to get to this is because I've been doing a lot of fretting lately. I've also just got done finishing launching the fretwork course with world-renowned luthier Michael Baskin here lately, and there's a lot of great tips and tricks and things that you can pick up there. I even learned a lot of tips myself and new tricks that I put in my arsenal of tricks there just by watching Michael as I was filming. Before we get to that though, I've got some new things here that I want to point out here on my website. Let me see if I can get this to work here. Got my son here in the background just in case everything blows up. He can save my hide here. Let's see. Oh, look at that. It did work. This is my website. And there's a few new things about my website here. One of them is the teaching schedule. So if you just go to my website, o'brienguitars.com, click on teaching, and then you can click on the 2021 schedule. There it is. The 2021 schedule is up and available. So if you are interested in coming and building a guitar with me in 2021, there are still a few slots left there. You'll also notice that there's some virtual classes going to be going on, rosette making, also French polish, and steel string acoustic guitar voicing are going to be going on there. So if you want to get involved in those, go ahead and contact me. It's going to be online. It's going to be strictly online. We call them virtual classes, but they'll be done through a format kind of like what we're doing here, multiple cameras, and you'll be able to see what's going on my bench. I'll be able to see what's going on your bench. So kind of a cool thing that technology has offered us here. Also, if you go to the media tab, and I'm going to pull that up, and you click on video, there's a drop-down menu, and you click on videos. Then there's also a drop-down menu on the videos page there that will show you all of the videos I had available. So we have the Luthier Tips du Jour videos, we've got the Luthier Tips du Jour mailbag videos, we've got product videos, we've got Robert's guitars, instruments being built or played by students that have come in and built guitars with me. You can click on them and hear and see those guitars being played. Let's see, I got out of that window. Let's go back to where we were there. Videos. So drop down menu there and you can pull up all the videos that I've got. Another really cool addition to my website is the search function here. And if you just click on the little hourglass or magnifying glass thing there and type in, let's go with Z-epoxy. How about that? And then click on that. It pulls up all the videos that talk about Z-epoxy. And what do you know? There's one right there. And there I am with all my glory. And I can actually play this here if I wanted to. However, it would probably do some buffering since we're trying to play a full-fledged video through all of this computer wiring here. But if you wanted to, you could search anything there and pull up any subject. So those are just a few of the new functions and new things that I've added to my website there. And if you were to go out there, you'd find a lot of great information. So here I am back in all my glory. And we still got the Duke cam on. How's Duke doing down there, Thiago? Oh, he looks like he's down for the count. All right, let's start talking about fretting tools. I've got all the tools on my bench behind me here. And I'm just going to reach around, grab them, bring them over here. I'll turn on another camera, get a close-up of all of these tools so you can see what's going on here. I'm going to start with probably the most important tool. Huh? I got some questions going on there in chat.
No, people are just trying to talk to you. You got to keep reading chat.
All right. My son tells me that I need to start reading the chat function there. So let's see. We got some questions going on. Where's the Duke cam? Oh, it's up. It's up and running there. Sound is good. Good afternoon from Havana, Florida. We've seen that one. Petaluma, California, Wisconsin, Winter Haven, Florida. Let's see. Boa noite, companheiros do trabalho muito bom. Okay, we got some Brazilian luthiers on there. Greetings from the Soviet Union. Wow, thanks for tuning in. Chuck, you said there was a question?
No, I just said you needed to read chat.
Oh, I just need to read the chat. Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. One of the most important tools when it comes to fretting is this right here. I'm going to turn on another camera. Here we go. We should be with camera number 3 now. And hopefully everybody can see that. Does that look like that's going out okay? So what I'm looking at here, what you're looking at here, is probably one of the most important tools in doing fret work, and that is protectors for the soundboard. And there's a lot of different materials that you can use. What I'm using is just pieces of Formica. Drop by your local cabinet store or someplace where they just have a bunch of scraps, pick up a couple of pieces of Formica, put them on the upper bout beside the fretboard, trace them, cut them out, shape them, and then tape those to the soundboard before you even begin doing any fret work. You want to protect that instrument. If you're doing a refret and something that happens, you might be doing a refinish as well. Technical term for that is bad. And that happened to a friend of mine once, and you don't want to let that happen to you. So use the protectors. All right, let me grab this next tool. The first thing you need to do when doing fret job is decide whether you're doing a refret or whether you're doing a new fret. And Michael Baskin covers both of those scenarios in his fretwork course on my website, o'brienguitars.com. Click on the online courses and you can see that. If you're doing a refret, then you need to, first of all, evaluate what are we going to do? Come up with a plan of attack. And a lot of that sometimes involves getting frets out and correcting fretboard geometry. So to remove the frets, there are several ways to do it. The traditional way is heating the fret with a soldering iron and a little moisture around it, and then very slowly working that fret out without chipping the fretboard. I was introduced to a tool by Scott Baxendale about 20 years ago here in Colorado. And hang on just a second, Chuck. And I have made one of these tools, and I'll show it to you here in just a second. Chuck, you got a question for me, sir?
You're not hardwired.
Oh, I'm not hardwired. Yeah.
No.
Bring that hardwire down for me. Let's plug in.
It's going to disconnect the stream. Because it reconnects the Wi-Fi. It's going to disconnect the stream.
Okay. My son just informed me that I'm not hot wired here. Hardwired into the router, but it seems like it's working fine.
Isn't that stable? There was buffering a little bit. But...
Okay. Well, we'll just do the best we can here. I forgot to hardwire it into the router, so my bad, folks. But let me show you this tool right here. This is a tool that I use to remove frets, and it's just a pair of linesman's pliers, nippers, and if you just open up the front side there and then take a Dremel and open up that in there, then you can come in, let me see if I can find a piece of fret wire here, and go across the top of the fret wire like this across your fretboard and just work that out. And the fret wire just goes right through the tool and out the back side like so. And the lateral motion of the jaws applies downward pressure on the fretboard and keeps it from chipping. This is a fantastic tool. I've used this tool for almost 20 years, and I find that most of the time, 95% of the time, I can just pull those frets right out without having to heat or anything, and it works out really nice. How's the Duke cam going there? Got the Duke cam up and running still? Every now and then he decides he wants to go somewhere else here in the shop. So you have to get the frets out. That's one way to do it. The traditional method also works very well. All right, let's go back to the table here behind us. Let's see what other tools we've got. Aha. Before you remove the frets, you need to think about your fretboard geometry. And one way to test that is under tension. So leave your strings on. And I use this ruler right here. It's just got notches in it. And see if I can get it on here a little closer for you. Got some notches on it. And that way you can evaluate your fretboard geometry. Try it. All right. All right, folks, we're going to try and hardwire it here.
No, write that in the chat because they're probably...
Okay. Well, it looks like we're back. All right. I'm going to try and hardwire here, folks, with the router, see if we can get a little bit better connection. Steve says Chago's monkeying with the router. Buffering here. All right. Sorry, folks, we're buffering. I'm going to try and just plug in the hot wire here and hardwire and see if that'll work for us. We were talking about the straight edge. We back up and running there, Adriana?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, good. And let's turn the Duke cam off because now it's become the Adriana cam. So, because Duke has gone upstairs with my son to get the hardwire there for the router. All right, so we were talking about straight edge, and very important when it comes to correcting fretboard geometry. So if you decided that you need to correct fretboard geometry, then there's a few ways you need to do it. First of all, you need to check and make sure that you have, what radius it is, and a radius gauge works well for that. I have these blocks that I got from LMI, which are sanding blocks. You just glue some sandpaper to it, and that helps you check your radius as well. Also, I have these precision leveling bars that I got from LMI, and I just stick sandpaper to them. And I've got several different great sandpapers. I've got small, medium, and large. As far as the length, if I want to do the whole fretboard at once, then I just use a long bar like this. If I want to do part of the fretboard, this, or even just a very small portion, this right here. And those work fantastic for leveling, and then the block for radiusing. If you have a compound radius, then you have a little bit more trouble to go to, and Michael covers that very thoroughly in his fretwork course that we just produced there. So how are we doing with the buffering? We okay now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Should you ever bend stainless steel frets, and how? Oh, that came in as a question there. You want to try and plug it in here, John? Folks, I'm going to try and plug in the hard wire for the router.
Ethernet.
Huh?
It's Ethernet.
It's Ethernet. See, I don't even know the technology here. This is my son that's telling me all of this. We got the cable there? All right. So we're going to try and plug it in. If things blow up, then that's just the way it goes. There we go. All right. We didn't get disconnected, did we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep. Oh, now it looks like we're back. All right. So there we go. That should improve our connection there just a little bit. You guys give me a thumbs up if that worked for you. All right, should you ever bend stainless steel frets, and how? Yeah, let me show you a little tool. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I might as well. And we're going over here to the one of the drawers under the bench there, and that's this tool here. This used to be plans available on the internet for these things. These are just has a couple of bearings on there. You can adjust this, and you run your fret wire through it, and it puts a radius on the fret wire. And that's one way of doing it. If you want to match the fret wire exactly to the fretboard, then you can do that. I personally don't use this very often. If you ever need to put a radius on a piece of fret wire, then one way to do it is just grab your fret wire like this with a pair of nippers and just do like this. Fantastic. You just put a radius on there. Now, if you're wanting that to match your fretboard exactly, and in some cases you do, then you want to use that little gauge here. I don't even know what you call this thing. Fret wire bender, whatever, and you just crank your wire through there. Michael, in his video, he actually uses this and shows it to put it through 2 or 3 times. It helps it maintain the correct radius a little bit more. And also, he says it helps harden the metal a little bit. So if I were using stainless steel, yes, I would definitely probably use that. I don't like to use stainless steel, though, and I have very few clients ask for it. What's your efficient way to work with stainless steel frets? Well, the most efficient way is just to not work with it. It does offer a degree of difficulty, and if I ever do, I'll upcharge for it. It's going to be a little hard on the tools, going to have a little bit more wear and tear on the tools. So just learn to work with it. It's not that bad. I mean, it's not like the kiss of death. Just learn how to work with it. Peter, after building steel strings, I found myself with a problem on my first ukulele. The fret wire from LMI FW-72 is already curved. What's a good way to unbend the fret wire? Well, it's kind of the same way, is just grab your nippers like this and go the opposite way. And that will take the radius back out of it. So put the radius in, take the radius out. And I don't think it needs to match perfectly. The hammer would do a lot of the work if that's the way you're doing it, or pressing it. I really don't worry too much about making it match exactly. All right, let me clear the bench off here, and let's grab the next tool here. Did our connection improve? We got less buffering now? Fantastic. All right. So once you get the fret wire out, you've done your correction on your fretboard geometry, then you need to think about reinstalling some fret wire, unless you want a fretless instrument at that point. First thing you need to look at is, are the slots deep enough and are they clean? One way to get in there is just a fret saw. I almost said coleslaw. Fret saw. And this fret saw here I got this probably 25 years ago. Don't even know where I got it, but it has a little depth gauge on it. You can set to exactly the tang depth. And you come in and just clean out and deepen if you need to. Now that works great if you've got an unbound fretboard. If you have a bound fretboard and your slots are not deep enough, that's a good way to see a grown man cry. I don't recommend that. You don't want to see a grown man cry. So if it's a new installation and you're the one that slotted the fretboard and bound it and they're not deep enough, shame on you. That'll be the last time that's ever happened to you. Don't let that happen again. If it's a refret and they're not deep enough, then you need to find a way to deepen those slots. It's a bit of work, but it's not impossible. Let me show you what I use. What I have here now is a Dremel with a bit in there, and I've got this set up right now for doing rosettes because that's what I use this particular one for. But I use a dental bit for opening the fret slots, and I would change the base out. This is the, like I said, the circle cutting base, and just put in a little dental bit, and that dental bit is kind of like a wedge, like a tip of a spear, and I just lightly run that across each fret. That will help clean out the glue and will help deepen if you need to. And Michael Baskin demonstrates that all in his fretwork course. Fantastic, very detailed in how he does that. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this class right now, or this live stream, to show how to do it. So I just want to introduce you to it. If you want to take it further, you can. All right, so you got to get them deep enough, got to get them cleaned out, got to make sure we can come in and put the frets back in. So let's get rid of this. And this is a tool that's used to be nice to the next guy. What I've got here is just a 3-corner file. I got this from LMI. It's got a safe edge on all 3 edges there, and I just lightly run this across the fret. And what it does is it slightly chamfers the top of the fret slot. Now, the tang, as it goes in, has little barbs on it. And if you ever have to pull those out, or if you're banging it in and going across the fret and it's coming out as you're going across, it could lift pieces of the fretboard material out. And so if you chamfer the top of that fret slot, it helps the fret slide in a little bit easier. It also is going to be nice to the next guy when those frets have to come back out. And you might be the next guy. So be nice to yourself. Let me just take a quick look here at the chat box here. Let's see here. What were you thinking? Stop spamming. That's my son writing something there. What grade progression should be used from leveling to finish? I assume you're talking about Sandpaper, and it sounds like you're talking about finish work. Well, today's topic is fretting, but if you're talking about sanding the fretboard, then what I do is I start with about, well, it depends. If I'm radiusing the fretboard, I start with 60 grit and a lot of elbow grease. And I radius that fretboard from 60 all the way up to about 120. Then I do my inlay work, fret markers. Oh, by the way, the fret markers on the face of the fretboard, those are for the audience, and the ones that are on the side of the neck, when you're looking down as a player, those are for the player, in case you didn't know that. And if you ever want to mess with your audience, you put the ones on the face of the fretboard on the wrong spot. That way, you know, when all those guitar players out there in the audience are evaluating what you're doing, you can screw them all up thinking that you're hitting a different chord than you actually are. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, I sand all the way up to 320. Then I put my inlays in or whatever I'm doing there, and then I'll go ahead and sand it up to 220. Now, my progression is I go ahead and put my frets in, do my fret work, and I stop there at 220. After my finish is done, then I'll go ahead and do 320, 600, 1000 if you need to. I usually stop at about 400, 600. I don't like a mirror polish on the ebony or the other material that you're using for your fretboard. I just prefer, you know, get it close, and I don't polish up to a high gloss. It looks great, and if I ever go to a show, sometimes I'll do that. It looks great sitting on the table with all this polished ebony and polished frets. But about 15 minutes of playing, then you got finger marks all over your fretboard. So I don't take it to a mirror finish. So be nice to the next guy. Triangular file. Let's grab another tool here. All right, at this point, we need to start thinking about putting frets back in. Now, in my classes, I give the analogy that doing fret work is like building a house. If the basement is square and plumb, when you get to the roof, everything should fit. If the basement is not square and plumb, when you get to the roof, as you're building up, you get to the roof, you've compounded your problem and nothing fits. So when it comes time to install the frets, you're already at the roof. Things should be square and plumb, to use the analogy of the house at that point. Let me just check real quickly. Had another question. Giju, hey, you're from Korea. I remember Giju. He came here for a class once. How you doing, Giju? Hope all's well there with you and your family there in Korea. Let's see. I have better luck with my fretwork or fret wire over radius. That's from TJ. Yeah, that's sometimes an issue too. If you want to over radius your fret wire, it tends to hold those edges down a little bit better. So you could also do that as well. What I'm presenting here to you in today's stream is, just some options, some possibilities. And sometimes you're going to use different scenarios or tooling or possibilities on one fret job, and another fret job you'll do something different. So it's good to know all of them. There was another question here I missed. Let's see. What do you advise to correct the chipping of the fretboard that may happen when you take the fret out? Okay, as you're removing the frets, if something happens, and sometimes it does, and it chips the wood out, don't just huff and puff and blow all the chips off on the floor. Try and keep them in place, and then use a small pipette with some CA glue and lock them into place. If you have to rebuild portions of the fretboard, I find that using dark or black colored CA glue or an epoxy, Glue Boost has a great product for that. Works great to rebuild portions of an ebony fretboard. If it's a different color fretboard, rosewood's a little tougher. Maple, forget it, you're going to see it. But try and keep those little chips in place. Michael discusses that again in his fretwork course, and actually shows how to do it. Also, if you have a lot of wear and tear on the fretboard, he shows how to fix that as well. Let's see. Approximately what angle do you put on the fret ends after they've been installed? That's a good question. Also, there was a question, I don't see it here anymore, but it was talking about hemispherical fret ends. I like those, and Michael shows how to do that in his fretwork course. I mean, it's an all-inclusive course. Shows how to do the hemispherical fret ends, and it's very inclusive, very detailed, a lot of close-up shots, and it looks really cool, and it feels really cool to the player. So back to that question, what angle do you put on the fret ends? Well, I was taught, I'm going to get there, but let's go ahead and get to that. I was taught that when you file the fret ends flush, and I just used this flat bastard file here with a safe edge, and I used the fine one, not the coarse one. I file everything flush at 90 degrees. I was taught at that point to turn it at about a 10 to 15 degree angle and continue with the same file. These days we use a different tool that I'll show you here in a minute. But anywhere between about 10 and 15 degrees. That's what I like to use. Sometimes the player likes a little bit more, sometimes the player likes a little bit less. So ask your client. Let's see. Fret finish and dressing too. Yes, we're going to get to that here real soon. What do you think of using walnut for a fretboard and neck? I've read on some forums that that's not recommended, and others saying that it is a great option. What do you think, fretwork wise? I think it's fine. In fact, I had a student this year, right about the height of COVID here in Colorado, was back in March or April, Deanna, I think? March, yeah, that came from Texas, wanted to do an all Texas wood guitar. And he had a bunch of walnut from a farm or ranch or something there. They had a bunch of Texas mesquite and stuff. And so we built an all Texas good guitar, and the neck was walnut and the fretboard was walnut. I think it did fine. Okay. So walnut's fine, in my opinion. Greetings from Russia. Thank you for all your work. Well, thank you, sir. I can't pronounce your name, or ma'am. It might be a ma'am. I'm not sure. But thank you very much for tuning in. Let's see. Hammering frets versus using a press. I'm going to get there. Don't worry. Drew Boyd. Hey, Drew. How you doing? Drew, thanks for tuning in. Drew did the marketing for Luthier's course with me here a year or two ago. In fact, Drew's going to be here in my shop in December. We're going to build another guitar together. But thanks for tuning in, Drew. Let's see. I will experiment on how much to overbend to see if stainless steel frets springs back at all, or if to stick with exact board radius. Thanks from Florida. Yeah, experiment a little bit. Some people like to over radius. Some people like to under radius. It depends on the metal you're working with and how well your slots are and that kind of stuff. Let's see. We were getting to the point where we were talking about installing frets here. Here's Paulo from Brazil. Great channel, very nice classes. Thanks for your efforts on teaching us. Thank you very much, Paulo. Muito obrigado. Are you a fan of doing semi-hemisphere fret ends? I knew that I'd seen that somewhere. Yeah, I liked it. I think it looks really cool. There are a lot of different techniques out there to do it. One of the simplest methods that I have seen for doing it, I learned from Michael Baskin. There's another plug for Michael's course. I mean, it's just fantastic. I love the way that he does it, and it's very simple. And it looks really cool. David Foster, how do you like the Evo Fret Wire? I like it. Now, David, I haven't opened up your box of materials over there on the bench yet for tomorrow's class. But if you were to choose the Evo Fret Wire, that's fine. It's the Evo wire, for those that don't know, it has a little more gold, yellowish color to it. Really impressive. It's a little more, it's a little harder, perhaps even more, a little more brittle. But stands up the test of time, takes on a lot of heavy playing. I like it. Let's see, Drew, looking forward to December's class. Me too, Drew. David Foster, here, let's see, how do you like the Evo? Okay, we already talked about that. Okay, let's get on to the next tool. We need to install the frets. And people ask that question that somebody else asked here in the chat group is hammer or press? And my answer is yes. Whatever it takes to get that fret wire in. By the way, how are we doing with buffering there, Adrienne? Are we okay?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, so we've solved that problem by hardwiring. I should have done that. I just forgot. So I was taught to hammer. And there's a lot of hammers on the market. I'm going to go to camera number 3 here again. Here's one where these are available from Luthier supply warehouses. Brass on one side, plastic on the other. Works fantastic. The problem is, if you haven't done your basement square and plumb, when it comes time to hammer, you're having to really put a little horsepower into it. You can wind up with this brass part, especially dinging or damaging your fret wire. Well, if you're having to, sweat's pouring down your forehead and veins are popping out, something's wrong. You didn't do your prep work properly and you're trying to, muscle it in. That's going to cause a number of problems. One of the problems is when you're installing it, you're going to ding the fret wire, which means you created a lot of work for yourself because now you have to level that out of there, which creates a lot of work for yourself when it comes time to recrown. There goes half your fret life because you've mowed it all down. It just takes a bad situation and makes it worse. So if you're having to pound it in heavily, something's wrong. These hammers work great if you've done your prep work properly. I was taught to use this hammer. This is just a dead blow hammer. It's got a little shot or something in the hammer, and it helps with the spring back or the bounce back as you hammer. So it helps seat those things pretty good. If you like to press in, then that's fine. There's a press like this that you can just clamp around your neck, match your caul here with the radius that you're using, and then just come in and just clamp that in. You also have the little manual hydraulic type presses. I call it hydraulic, but it's got a little lever on it, drill press type presses. Those all work, and depending on how ornery that fretboard is, you may wind up using the hammer method, the drill press type press method, and the clamping type press method all on the same fret job. It's good to know all of them, and it's good to incorporate the one that you need at that specific moment. So learn them all and then find a way that works for you. And even when you found that way, for example, I said I like to hammer. Every now and then I have to come in and press it in if you got an ornery one that doesn't want to behave. Okay, let's see. Nathan is asking, what are the pros and cons of gluing in your frets? I have fretboards on a guitar that I built, let's see, that was probably my first or second or third guitar, I don't remember, over 25 years ago just about, and I never glued the frets in and I've never had a problem. I've had guitars that I've glued the frets in with almost epoxy and they've come out. So go figure. I think a lot of it has to do with your prep work. These days, I like to put glue in the slot. Now, what kind of glue? Yellow glue, white glue, fish glue, CA glue, hide glue. They're all open to discussion. In Michael's Fretwork course, he shows how to use hide glue. And what I use these days is CA glue. And rather than wick it in from the top, I wick it in from the sides when I'm plugging that little void between the bottom of the fret and the slot, you know, the slot's always a little deeper than your fret tang. And so there's a little void in there. And so when you need to do your finish work, you need to plug that hole. So at that time, I wick a little thin viscosity CA glue in, and it even come out the other side if you're not careful. So I use CA glue, but I think all of the options are valid. I like Michael Baskin's method of using hide glue, because when you go to install new frets, the old glue will reactivate, or will be reactivated with the new glue. And so you don't have as much cleaning to do per se. Let's see. I think I've got all the questions there. The press is a star on refrets with worn slots and the need for glue. Yes, it is. However, there's another method here. And this is a method that I learned from my friend and mentor, Kent Everett of Everett Guitars. He showed me this method years and years ago. This is just a piece of hard maple. But if you look at it closely, it's got a little radius on there. And I've got several different sizes, and I span at least 2 frets at once, no more than 3, but usually about 2. And if I have some fret ends that are a little ornery, I just put this on there and put a cam clamp over it, and then wick a little CA glue in the side and just let that dry, move on to the next fret while it dries. So these are another way of installing just hard maple and using that as a clamping call. I guess that's the poor man's way of doing it, but it works very well. Thanks, Kent, for that suggestion there years ago. Let's see here. If you are installing frets on a bound fretboard, now you got a problem. You've got to cut out that little portion of the fret tang so that the fret end can overhang the binding on the fretboard. 2 ways to do it, so pay attention here. Here we are, camera number 3 again. This tool, I don't know who made it. I don't know where I got it. I've had it for years and years and years. But it's got a little guillotine in there. And if you come in and just place your fret wire in there, and then that nips that little tang off there. The problem is it's never exactly perfect. And there's usually a little nib or something under there that will keep the end of the wire from seating all the way down on the fretboard. So a lot of people come in with a file and they're filing it and doing stuff. I'm going to introduce you to a tool that, when I got this tool, my life got better. This is called the Tang Filer from LMI. And this is the tool that I told you, if you were to stay tuned here, this is the one that's on sale right now. It's 15% off. However, you have to use, let me get this other camera up here. It's 15% off. However, you have to use the promo code TANG, T-A-N-G, and you'll get 15% off the price of this tool. And I think that's going for, what, 4 or 5 days, I think is what Natalie said out at LMI. So pay attention, perhaps you want to use that code. Here's how it works. I'm going to go back to camera 3. So this is what we want the tang to look like. See how it's got a little nib off of it there? So I've got this set up. Basically what it is just a file that's embedded in a piece of aluminum here, and it's got some set screws that I can adjust it up and down, do things to adjust to the piece of fret wire that I'm using. Then it has this little hold down clamp here. And I come in and just place that in there, use the toggle clamp to hold it down. Notice how I've left that hanging off the edge there just a little bit. So I come in here and just watch the wrist now. I'm going to turn it like this. Just come in and just file that against the side of that file there. And with just a few passes, you can see that I've, let's see if I can pull this out of here. You can see that I've fixed that tang, oh, there it is, perfectly, and it's exactly flush with the part of the fret wire that's going to go over the binding. I've just removed the tang, and it's perfect every time. So if you're doing especially hemispherical fret ends, this is a fantastic way to remove that tang over that part of the bar or the bound fretboard, and then come in and shape the end of that fret. I'm going to show you one more time here. There we go. Just place it in there, clamp it down, run it against the side of the file. There we go. And if you've adjusted this and set it up properly, it comes out perfect every time. So that is a fantastic tool. One of my favorite fretting tools in my shop that I have in my bag of tricks for doing fret work is that tool, the Fret Tang Filer from LMI. If you want to take advantage of their sale they're having right now on this tool, 15% off, use the promo code TANG, T-A-N-G. All right, enough of that. Let's see what else we got over here. This tool here. This is a tool. If you have to use this tool, perhaps something went wrong. So hopefully you don't have to use this tool. Adriana, how are we doing there with the buffering? We okay?
Good.
All right, my Duke cam has become my wife cam. Adriana, say hello to the camera there. Yeah, you're right here. You're off camera there.
I don't think it's on there.
So yeah, the Duke cam, there she is. She's sitting over there on Duke's bed, and Duke has decided to take off. So maybe we need to rename that camera from Duke cam to the Adriana cam. All right, I'll turn it off for you. All right, so if you have to use this tool, probably something went wrong. And let me turn camera number 3 on here again. If the fret slot is too large and the fret wire is just dancing around down inside there, you either need to diminish the size of the fret slot or you need to expand the tang. This little tool is for that. Now, I would never expect this to happen on a new fret. If it did, something went wrong in your prep work. However, on a refret, who knows how many times that instrument's been refretted or what's been done to it. And those slots sometimes are a little wide, therefore leaving the fret wire a little sloppy in there. So if you look closely at this tool, it's got some little zigzag things there on the end, and you just put your fret wire in it and just give it a quick little mash like that. And what it does is it separates the end of that wire there. I don't know if this is even coming through on the camera here. If I get it too close, it's going to want to go out of focus though. But it expands that and makes a little zigzag out of that tang. Don't use too much of this though, because if you wind up spreading that tang too much, you're going to have to pound the crap out of it again to get it to go in, and it's going to wind up creating what's called a compression back bow. Compression back bow, you've got your fretboard, you've got all these little slots cut in there. If you start driving wedges into your fretboard, guess what your fretboard's going to do? That's called a compression back bow. Technical term for that is bad, because you spend all of that time leveling and flattening and radiusing, and now you're making a wedge out of it, or a compression back bow by driving wedges into it. There are times, however, when you would want that to happen. For example, some of the early Martins, I think up till about 1975 or something, mid-78, something like that, Martin guitars had no truss rods. So the only way to control the neck was with the amount of pressure against the sides of those walls of the fret slots. It's called compression fretting. And once again, Michael Baskin covers that very well in his fretwork course of how to use different size fret wire. Tang, the fret wire, the top is the same, but the tang is different sizes, and he has a very thorough demonstration of that in his course. How to adjust the amount of relief in your fretboard by using different size fret wire. It's a fantastic method if you don't have truss rods, or if you need to do some some correction of your fretboard geometry. Let me just check my chat box again here real quick. Let's see. A lot of people combine the techniques, set fret ends with the hammer and then press. Seems to work well. That's correct, Pedro. And I use a lot of different methods, sometimes on the same fret job. How do you feel about gluing frets for a new install? Yes, I think that's fantastic. Trevor Gore saying that tight bond improves installation and removal. Fantastic. If that's what Trevor uses, tight bond, let's go with it. I'm not opposed to any type of glue. I think it all works. Let's see. Drew Boyd just bought the Michael Baskin Fretwork course. Well, thank you for that, Drew, and thanks for creating that with him. I'll try to have that all done before my visit. Yeah, you're coming in December, Drew, and I'm gonna hold you to a little bit higher standard. Drew's been here in my shop several times. We built several guitars together. I'm to the point now where I just point him into the shop and I go have coffee and come back a few hours later and he's got a guitar. So he's doing some fantastic work. So the bar gets higher each time that Drew comes in. Let's see. A good luthier should be able to improvise tools. That's true. When I was living in Brazil, I didn't have access to all these fancy high-tech tools that our luthier supply warehouses these days offer us. And thank God that these places exist, because I had to make all of my own tools, and a lot of it was just, you know, stuff from the hardware store, and you just do the best you can. However, my quality of my jobs and my fret jobs went up tremendously when I started getting a little bit better tooling. But the old timers didn't have that either, and they wound up doing fantastic fret jobs. Mike, thanks for all the vids and your help. Oh, you're quite welcome. Adriana says she's looking forward to coming into town, Drew. Sometimes you can tighten up a fret by driving the fret horizontally after clamping down. That's true. In fact, now that you've touched on driving the fret horizontally, some frets were installed horizontally. Michael covers that in detail in his fretwork course about when you would want to do that, and if that were done, then you probably want to drive it out too if you ever need to remove it. I have watched, learned, and enjoyed many of your videos, but this one is just great. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. And thank you, tell Michael thank you for that too. Let's see here. Are diamond grit files sufficient for stainless frets? Yes, they are. In fact, you can use just regular files. I'm getting to that tool here in just a minute as we progress through the fret job here. But yes, diamond files are fine. Do you ever rent out bench space for beginners? That's from Mike. No, I usually don't. The only bench space that I rent out is a class. So if you want to come build a guitar with me, then you're welcome to get on my calendar. I showed you at the beginning of the stream my 2021 schedule, and there's a few slots left there. So no, I don't just let people come into my shop and work for rented bench space. Okay, the next tool. Oh, I got to go back to this tool. This is, I was talking about you having to crimp it a little bit if the slot is a little wide. However, what if the slot's too narrow? There's a way to fix that too. If you go on down inside the tool here a little bit, rather than using the tip, which crimps it, if you go down inside there a little bit, there's a masher inside there, kind of like a pair of pliers. And if you just mash it slightly, there's this metal is soft enough that you can actually make that tang just a little narrower. And occasionally I'll have to use that too. So there you go. All right, let's go on to the next tool here. And how's the camera switching going on? Is it okay, Adriana?
Yeah.
We're doing okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so at this point, you've got all of your frets installed. And what I would do at this point is file them flush with the edge. I just use a flat bastard file, come in very carefully, file the edge. Now, if it's a new install, the finish work hasn't been done. If it is a refret, the finish work has been done. So you want to be extra careful that you don't come in and damage the finish. Now, if you get a light scratch or two, that's usually no big deal. You can usually buff it out on your buffer or hand polish it back up. Hit some sandpaper, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and a little scratch remover, and you're right back to where you need to be. I've also had to come in and French polish just that side of the fretboard, and that works well. After that, you want to bevel the edges. I was taught just to freehand it with this. Works great. Most people use a version of this tool, which is just a block of wood or a piece of plastic with a bunch of letters of the alphabet after it, and embed a file at an angle. That works fantastic. Problem with that is you're locked into whatever that angle is. What if the client says, oh, I prefer a little bit more or I prefer a little bit less? Well, now you've got this. So it's good maybe to learn both methods. Okay. Let's see, crowning file versus triangular file, pros and cons. Great. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Let me see if that's coming up next here. I tell you what, I'll address that here in just a second if you'll remind me. Once you've got all your frets in, you've got them filed flush. You've trimmed them off, and what I use is just a nipper here, and you come in, just nip them flush with the side of the fretboard, then file them flush, and then bevel them. Then I like to check to make sure they're all level. If you did your prep work properly, they're probably pretty close to level. However, I like to use this little triangle here. Let me get the camera over here. Use this little triangle here that I got from LMI. It's just got 3 precision edges, and they're all different lengths there because you only want to be spanning 3 frets at a time. And just come in and place it across 3 of the frets at each end of the fretboard and in the middle and try and rock it. If you've got some rocking going on, then you've got a high one. And I usually just come in and tap it with a hammer a couple times on the high one, and usually that solves the problem. If it doesn't, and it's just a little bit, then probably it's a discrepancy in the manufacturing of the fret wire, and you can level it out when it comes time to level and recrown. So as you progress up the fretboard, you go to the shorter sides, and by the time you get up to the, the 15, 16, 17 frets up in there, then you use a very small one. Just span 3 at a time. But you want to make sure that all of the frets are level. Good. All right. Next thing we're going to, speaking of leveling, we need to level and recrown. And if you did all of your prep work properly, in other words, if that basement is square and plumb, then this should just be a breeze. I used to hate fret work because I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't doing it properly. And when it came time to level and recrown, I was having to mow half that fret away because my fretboard geometry was not done properly. And that created a lot of work for myself to recrown the fret. If you did everything properly, and after I learned how to do that, then I became, the fret work became much more enjoyable because it was a breeze to do. So what I do is I come in with a Sharpie and I lightly blacken the top of each fret, just very quickly. And then I come in with a leveling bar. You can use the precision leveling bars with Sandpaper from LMI. You can use a block of wood. This one I've glued a file to. And you could use basically a 2x4. Just true it up across the joiner or the hand plane and slap some sandpaper to that. But you want to lightly dust the tops of those frets. Just go with the frets across them. Now, if you got a compound radius going on, then you want to kind of fan, fishtail the end of your leveling bar. If it's just a standard radius, then you want to make sure you can follow that radius as you go across. But just a light dusting should be all that it takes if you did everything properly to this point. Now, coloring the top of the fret will tell you if there's a scratch pattern on it. You can still see the Sharpie, but if there's a small scratch pattern on it, then life's good. Fretboard extension. A lot of times on steel string guitars, the fretboard extension from the neck to body joint up to the sound hole has a slight drop off. So I usually level up to about the 15th, maybe 16th fret, and then the rest of it I slightly slope off a 64th to a 32nd. So let's see. Okay, now we need to recrown. Now here's going to address that question about triangular file versus the regular file, pros and cons, or diamond file. So here we go. Let me show you several different types of recrowning files. When I started learning how to build guitars, I didn't have a recrowning file. I don't think they even existed. The best we had was the triangular files that I showed earlier. Where'd that sucker go? There it is. Had the triangular file, and you would, file one side and roll your file over it, and then file the other side and roll until you got that sucker to a crown across the top, and it was nice and rounded. Now, since I didn't know how to do my fretwork properly, I was mowing down half the fret. There goes the fret life, and look at all the work I created for myself by having to do it this way. My life got a lot easier when I learned how to do fretwork, first of all. Second of all, when I got the diamond recrowning files. Or you don't even necessarily have to have a diamond recrowning file, but some type of contour that has a crown in it. And for example, here's one I got from LMI. And this is just a standard file. It's not a diamond file, but it has a radius in there. And most of your files will come with a medium type radius and then a jumbo type radius for, jumbo wire for like bases and stuff like that. So just use the correct side. Here's one that it's got a half round on there. I think I got this one also from LMI. So you file one side and then you come in and you file the other side. And that brings that roundness back up in there. Then I started going with the diamond files, and here's a kind of an offset file as you get up above the fretboard over the soundboard. And then this one here I got from a buddy of mine in Brazil that I also like a lot. So that's how you would recrown. Let me get some of this stuff back off the bench here. Speaking of keeping things off the bench, when you're doing fret jobs, you get a lot of these little tools out, and it's very easy to damage a guitar. So keep the bench clean as you work. Constantly put things away, get them away from the bench where the guitar is. If not, Something could happen. Happened to a friend of mine once. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, with all of that filing, leveling, and sanding, sometimes there's a little burr right on the edge of the fret. So here's your fret. We've been putting the bevels on there and all the filing and stuff, and right on there, sometimes there's a little piece of metal there. So if you come in with just a file, I don't remember where I got this file, but this is a very small precision file. It's got a cutting edge on either side. It's got a rounded safe edge and a flat safe edge. I use the rounded safe edge, and I just come right along the side of the fret and just roll it across the top of the fret on both sides like this, and just progress up the fretboard. And what that does is help file that little burr, if there happens to be one there, so that when your hand runs along there, it's not catching and uncomfortable to play. If you did your hemispherical fret ends, then you don't want to have to do any work. One of the beauties of doing the hemispherical fret ends is that once you get it all in there, you don't want to have to come back and level and recrown and touch up. It's done. If not, you can alter the shape, and Michael shows how to do that. So you're doing a lot of the work up front rather than at the end of the fret job. Very good. Thanks for your amazing help. The Big Swede, well, I certainly appreciate that. The Big Swede. A small rolling table next to you is a great option for your tools. Yes, it is. In fact, I've got one right next to me here. I've got all my computers and monitors and things on it that I'm helping run this stream, but a lot of times I'll use it for placing tools and stuff. I also find on the day that I do setups is another opportunity to damage a guitar. So you get a lot of these little tools out with fret files and reamers and all that kind of stuff. Be very careful that you don't damage the instrument. Happened to a friend of mine once. All righty. Oh, I forgot to mention this tool. This is a really good tool. This one right here is just a sack of shot, bird shot. And if you're using the hammer method, and you're up above the soundboard, and you're pounding on that soundboard, it's a great opportunity for you to have a bad day. I saw a guy when I was teaching at the college, he was pounding so hard he busted off 2 transverse braces there under his fretboard. And once that happens, that's a good way to see a grown man cry. You don't want that to happen. So you need something to help absorb the hammer blows or the shocks. And I use just this bag of bird shot. Now I've found that, and this has been proven scientifically, that the higher the number of the bird shot, the better the treble response, and the lower the number of the bird shot, the better the bass response. And if you put all of that into a dirty sock, then the mid-range happens to come out a little bit better. That's my story, I'm sticking to it. But I just shove that in the sound hole and pick up the guitar and then pound the frets in, and that helps absorb the hammer blows. So fantastic tool to have there, and very cheap to make. Let's see here. To finish up your fret job, you're going to need some sandpaper, and I didn't bring any out here. But depending on how far you want to take it, remember when I talked about prepping the fretboard, I stop at 220. At this point, I would do my finish work and stuff. I come back on setup day, and I sand everything to 320. Now you've got frets in there. You're not just sanding wood, you're sanding frets. And if you take your piece of sandpaper and wrap it around your middle finger, some people call that the driving finger, because I know some of you use that. Just wrap it around your middle finger like that, and then hold it in there like that, and just run it up and down the frets. And the fleshy part of your finger goes up and over, instead of flattening them out again, helps keep them rounded. And so I'll aggressively do that with 320 steel wool, and then I go in and put some oil. But if you want to take it higher, you can. You can go 400, 600. Michael Baskin in his course shows how to even use micro mesh and take it up to a nice mirror finish, and you can floss your teeth in the reflection if you need to. There you go. Let's see. It has to be an old sock to work right. That's right. That must be Rollo down there in Texas. It's all about the tone. You betcha. If you mix the shot, is the overall tone fuller? You know that I've never tried that. But yeah, I guess you could mix the number of shot there and perhaps get a little fuller, more rich tone. I don't know. You might be onto something there. All right. I talked about gluing frets in. I like to use just the thin viscosity CA glue and just a little pipette, and I'll roll it up on the side and put a little bit in there, roll it in, tack the end of the fret down, then I'll hit it with some sandpaper and fill the void with some sawdust, and I'll come in and hit it another time or two with a little drop of CA glue. And that That tacks the fret end down, and it also plugs the void. One more tool here that I've got to show you. This is not only good for fret work. This is good for a lot of things in your shop, and I'm going to get a close-up on this. That is the Guitar Builder's can of whoop ass. And I find that this tool, sometimes just having it on your bench as you're working, doing your fret job or your finish or whatever you're doing, I find that the guitar sometimes behaves a lot better just by having that out. I mean, you don't even have to pop the top on it and use it. Just have it on the bench. That seems to help quite a bit. All righty. I've come to the end of my presentation here. Let's see, do we have any more questions? Do you fret before or after installing the fretboard? That is a great question. I was taught to glue the fretboard to the neck and the body before doing fretwork. That gives me a golden opportunity to correct any fretboard geometry that I need to correct at that point. I know there's factories out there do it, and I know there's some very big name builders out there that will fret their fretboards before they attach them to the neck. I've never been able to make that work for me. The method that I was taught and how I progressed through the steps, it just works better for me if I glue the fretboard on, level, radius it, and do all my prep work before I start installing frets. So I attach it to the neck beforehand. What is your opinion on the fret rubber? I assume you're talking about those little fret erasers. That's fine. I mean, I don't particularly use them, but some people like them and swear by them. What it does, it has a little bit of abrasive in there and it helps polish the frets. But I've always been able to do that with sandpaper, micro mesh. I've also, in the past, used a little Dremel tool with a little buffing wheel on it, rub a little bit on the polishing compound and just run it across the top of the fret, get you a mirror finish in no time. Careful though, you can really heat that fret up in a hurry and soften some glue if you use glue to put in there. Let's see, what is the opinion on fret rubber? Okay, foam yoga blocks from the dollar store make a great good shock absorber. That's a great idea. Let's see, the customers behave a lot better too. Yeah, I assume you're talking about the Guitar Builder's can of whip ass. Drew says it's time to cut me off, Deanna.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little giddy here. All right, let's see. I hang a 10-pound sledgehammer next to the bench. That also works great. Let's see, get Duke after him. Oh, speaking of Duke, I think Duke's back. Let's turn the Duke cam on. There he is. Hey, Duke. How you doing, buddy? Hey, there's Big Duke. All right, folks, we've been at this, let me take a look at the clock. Well, heck, we've been at this about an hour. So I think we've had about as much fun as we need to have for one day. Remember the Fret Tang Filer, 15% discount for the next, I think 3, 4, 5 days. LMI is having that sale. Use the promo code TANG, T-A-N-G, to get that 15% discount. You'll thank me later, and you'll find that it does a great job of removing that tang right up to the point you need to, nice and cleanly, so that when you install it, everything's good. All right, folks. If there's no more questions, I'll be signing off. So over and out. Thanks again for tuning in. I certainly appreciate it. Happy building, folks.